People often talk about the modern world, but what do we really mean by the modern world as it exists today? Understanding this context is important for understanding the emergence of modern Catholic social thought. After the Industrial Revolution. The modern period in human history can be thought of as emerging from four interrelated developments. The first is the advent of the scientific revolution from the mid-16th century to today. This has given rise to prodigious expansion of our knowledge of the universe and of biological, chemical, and physical dimensions of human existence. Second, there is the development of modern technologies that this advent of scientific knowledge has helped to facilitate. Penicillin, modern surgery, electricity, the airplane, nuclear energy and nuclear weapons, industrial mass production, the computer chip, the internet, the drone, and artificial intelligence. The list goes on. Third, the modern era is characterized by the rise of market economies at the national and global scale that provide jobs and education and that create a global economic network of interdependencies, but that also permit new forms of exploitation of persons and nations and the environment, and that can give rise to new systemic forms of marginalization of the less economically fortunate. Fourth, the modern period is characterized by the advent of the secular constitutional state, which values individual freedom, democracy, and theories of human rights, but that also can manifest deep prejudices against or ambivalence about religion or about classical religious notions of human nature and human dignity. Often religious people have found themselves living on the margin of modern secular cultures, but they have also made major contributions to the emergence of modern democratic states that seek to live in peace with one another. The rise of modernity gave rise in turn to what we can call the Industrial Revolution, especially in the 19th century. At this time, European societies especially used technology to massively transform the circumstances of work. The problem then arose of workers' rights because many disempowered workers were obliged to work incredibly long hours for inadequate pay, and many countries permitted child labor, which in turn denied citizens adequate education opportunities. Huge inequalities became systemic, and figures such as Bishop Ketteler in Germany, Leon Harmel in France, Cardinal Manning in England, and Cardinal Gibbons in the United States encouraged the development of larger-scale solutions to the so-called social question that would be grounded in Christian ethical principles. It was in this context that the 19th century Pope Leo XIII, who lived from 1810 to 1903, inaugurated the formation of modern Catholic social thought, especially in his famous papal encyclical Rerum Novarum in 1891. Leo XIII affirmed the rights of workers to a living wage and noted that workers could justly form unions for their own economic and material protection. At the same time, Leo strongly underscored the right to private property and the right to pursue commerce in a free society. He thus challenged the nascent culture of capitalism to improve morally while steering clear of a communist or socialist notion of the centralized control of the means of production and of human property. Subsequent to the pontificate of Leo XIII, there was a renaissance of social reflection that would in turn impact Catholic intellectual life and teaching in the 20th century. Certain popes such as Pius XI, John XXIII, John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and Pope Francis have sought very self-consciously to continue and advance this tradition. And it's also reflected in the official teachings of the Catholic Church, such as in the Second Vatican Council and in the 1992 Catechism of the Catholic Church and the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church. Writing between the two world wars, Pius XI affirmed the rights and obligations of education, noting that each child should be afforded adequate educational opportunities from his or her family by the Church and human society, working together to assure formation in both religious and secular academic subjects. He also underscored the right of human beings to marry and to have the number of children they wish without coercion from the state, even as he also affirmed the rights of the unborn and the sanctity of human life in the womb. Writing after World War II, John XXIII taught that the Church can and should recognize natural human rights, but also duties. as a dimension of modern society and seek to uphold and defend all of these within the context of modern secular democracies. John Paul II underscored the dignity of the individual within the context of the modern state and condemned totalitarian forms of governance that fail to respect the freedom of the individual to seek and communicate the truth. Benedict XVI underscored the notion of pursuit of charity as the basis of genuine societies of economic and democratic prosperity. In other words, societies can and should pursue justice in their protection of the common good through laws governing social interactions and economic exchanges, but they can and should do this ultimately to facilitate deeper relations of charity. Here, charity is understood as the divine love of God for human beings, love of human beings for God as well as for one another. Finally, Pope Francis has advanced a notion of integral human ecology, one that takes seriously the responsibilities that human beings have to preserve and care for our common ecological environment, which can be altered or severely damaged by human industrial production. The earth is given to us by God for the common good of humanity, now and in the future, and as a reflection of the glory and goodness of God. Furthermore, human beings can act collectively for the greater good of human culture only if they are able to live in harmony with one another in a universal human fraternity. Nation-states and institutions within those states need to recognize the individual human dignity that is common to every human person. By cultivating a civilization of fraternity in this profound philosophical sense of the term, we can create the adequate conditions for a deeper, free, and intelligent cooperation with one another to address ongoing and dynamic social problems that emerge. The human being cannot be governed merely by technocracy and economic methods. Something deeper is required that allows for a genuine communion of persons at the basis of human society. In this video and the previous one, we have merely skimmed the surface of Catholic social thought by setting it out in a chronological and historical presentation. In the coming videos, however, we will treat the topic thematically, first by presenting the core principles of Catholic social thought, and then by applying them to a set of key issues of contemporary importance. In this way, we hope to manifest the riches and splendor of Catholic social thought as a resource, not only for Catholics or for religious people, but for anyone interested in helpful resources concerning the truth of the human condition and the nature of just life in society.
In the next episode, we'll ask what aliens and philosophers can tell us about human nature and human dignity. If this is the first episode you've watched, we recommend you watch the introductory episode of this series next.